Rama asked, "Lord, pray tell me, how does this earth exist? How does this stellar sphere revolve? And how do the Loka mountains exist?" The Loka mountains mark the edge of the world. I wonder if they could be taken as the asteroid belt. Anyway, it seems like Rama's asking what we might consider a scientific question. And science would give us two answers. It's got two possible answers. One answer is in terms of the Big Bang and evolution and a whole sequence of events which brings us to right here. But the other answer, the more direct answer, is really in terms of perception. How does this earth exist? In other words, how does it exist in our awareness? How do we come to perceive it? How do we come to perceive or understand certain notions about the stellar sphere, or what we might call the celestial sphere? Actually, I've got one here. Here we have our celestial sphere. I don't know if you can see much, but this represents many of the constellations which are visible in the night sky. And it glows in the dark. So it seems that the ancient Hindus realized that the universe is spherical. But anyway, the point is, how do we perceive this? How do we come to be aware of this? And this is really what's interesting, not the theories based on the assumption that there's something out there and how it developed, but the theories about how we actually come to know this. Vasishtha replied, "Just as a little child imagines a plaything in the empty space and thinks it is there, the notion of the existence of this earth arises in the infinite consciousness." So we've got this notion that there's something out there, the earth, the world, the stars. He whose vision is defective sees little balls of hair in space where no such balls exist. This is probably referring to what's sometimes called floaters. When you look at a bright sky, you see them, and it's really the nerve endings at the back of the retina. It's a slight design fault in the eye. We actually have to look through this web of nerves, these ganglia, in order to perceive, and sometimes we're actually seeing these ganglia, these little balls of hair, as if they're out there in space, but they don't exist out there. Even so, such notions as the existence of the earth arose in the infinite consciousness at the moment which has come to be known as creation. And this wasn't 15 billion years ago, it's right now. We have this notion that there's a world out there, that the earth exists. We could say that this notion arose as part of our education, and that it was embedded in us at a certain age. We can go along with that, but that's the story. But really it's something which is being reinforced moment to moment. It's one of our underlying assumptions and convictions. A city which exists in the mind of the daydreamer needs no support. It's got the imagination as its sole support. Even so, this world is supported only by the experiencing of the infinite consciousness. It's the reality of consciousness which gives reality to all the notions it believes in. So you have this notion that there's a world out there. This notion arises in your consciousness, and because it does so, that's what gives the notion its reality. Whatever appears in the consciousness, and however it appears to be and for whatever duration, It seems to exist in that consciousness, in that manner, for that duration, on account of the inherent power in consciousness. And we see this quite clearly in our dreams. It doesn't matter how absurd the dream is, it appears in consciousness and we accept it. If you happen to be talking to a monkey and the monkey's talking back, then you accept it as a reality. You engage with it. You don't dismiss it as absurd, as inconsistent. That's what's arisen in consciousness. That's what's presented itself to you. That's what you accept. It's only latterly, when you start thinking about it and inquiring into it, that you might dismiss it as absurd. But at the time, you go along with it. And this is what we do. This is what consciousness does. Therefore, just as in the eyes of one with eye defect, the ball of hair does float in space, this earth, etc., does exist in consciousness. We go along with this notion. If consciousness had seen water flowing up and fire burning down in the very beginning, such would have been the nature of these elements even now. And if this is what happens in a dream, it's what happens in a dream. It's what is the nature of our reality, as far as that dream is concerned. But it is because that consciousness saw the earth as falling in space that it seems to fall even now, and consciousness correspondingly seems to rise in relation to the earth. Thus duality or diverse motion arises. The meaning of this passage isn't obvious, or not to me anyway. If anybody's got an idea about what it means, how consciousness sees the earth as falling in space, and that consciousness correspondingly seems to rise in relation to the earth. If you know what this is referring to, perhaps you could leave a comment. I think all I'm going to do is put a modern interpretation onto this. We see the earth as falling in space, in the sense of regarding it as inert. So it falls in that sense. It falls from being regarded as consciousness to something outside consciousness, to something inert. And in this sense also, consciousness rises. It seems to regard itself as something separate from the earth. This is the view of the atheist, which I described recently, which seems to me to be quite irrational. The atheist regards the universe as blind forces. The atheist regards the universe as unintelligent, as insentient. And yet I'm sure the atheists would regard themselves as intelligent and sentient. So it seems to be that they're separating themselves from the universe. So the earth or the world is somehow falling in space. It's out there. And the individual awareness has pumped itself up. It's risen in relation to the earth. So we make that distinction, don't we? Thus duality, or diverse motion, arises. I'm not quite sure about diverse motion, but we can certainly say this is the basis for duality, this separation of the individual from the world. I suppose we could understand the diverse motion as the result of perception, the perception that there's lots of stuff going on out there, whereas our awareness is neutral and still. It's what's perceiving. It's what's doing the perceiving. So this is a fundamental barrier that has to be inquired into. We have to look into this discrimination that we make.